to be invited to address you. You all look like you are chomping to go. My name is Noriega, and I currently serve in the Mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel's cabinet as Commissioner of the Commission on Human Relations. The mayor came into office, and I have a cold too, okay, so. The mayor came to office in May of 2011 and brought with him his appointments. So therefore, I'm a mayoral appointee. The question posed to me was, what's it like to be out in the workplace? Now that really seems like such an easy question. An expected answer could be good, bad, fun, challenging. But for me, and perhaps for you, being out is a multi-layered concept. It's a continued process, and it's something that has changed for me over time. The job of commissioner builds on the variety of interests my activism has taken me, and I'm thrilled to have that variety recognized as relevant and yes, even necessary in government. I feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to have been at the forefront of the rights that we have and are now beginning to win, and to have a job where I enforce the City of Chicago's civil rights laws, not only based on sexual orientation and gender identity, but on all 15 of the protected classes. Now, I brought a couple brochures, but obviously I cannot bring them out. So I will leave them out somewhere where they tell me to. We live in an amazing time right now. After winning the right to associate with each other, to love each other, to be out at work, to adopt children, we're on the cusp of marriage equality. When I came out, I didn't imagine that such inclusiveness would be my reality. When you're an activist, you fight for a dream. You fight for what is right. Sometimes you make it up as you're going along. I really didn't know what it would look like 30 years later. So I'm going to take a step back and give you an idea of what being out in the workplace has meant for me over the years. When I came out in the late 70s, the radical concept was feminism. And the world was not yet a very friendly place for queer people. And even worse, there were no legal protections. So you could, and many people were, fired from their jobs if they were discovered to be gay. People thought queer people were mentally unbalanced, sexual predators, and in general just immoral. So when I came out, coming out in the workplace, that was not a concept of the way that we talk about it now. Even though I was comfortable being gay, having people at work know did not offer any benefits. And so in lieu of being open about who you were, people who were gay would scope each other out and became very skilled at having conversations without saying anything about being gay. I had a management position in a company that I worked for in total for about 8 years in the 80s. I worked with creatives. Some of whom were gay, and some of whom were out. I was not out. As a single mom, I couldn't afford to lose my job. But I was out to my family, and I was already an activist in the community. But again, referring to the question posed to me, what is it like to be out in the workplace? In that place, in that job, it was sometimes difficult, frustrating, and sometimes there were pleasant surprises. At this job, there was a woman who worked in the non-traditional area on the loading docks. She was way butch. She would always want to talk to me. Which, of course, made me nervous. One, how did she clock me? And two, people in my office noticed that she would unnecessarily stop by and talk to me. Since we were always in the workplace, we could never have more than office-type conversations. I decided, to suggest we pick up lunch away from the office. As we were talking, I just figured this would be a safe place, away from everyone to acknowledge her girlfriend, who was always hanging around the dock unnecessarily and talking to her. Well, you would have thought I had accused her of stealing from the church coffers or beating somebody. She told me that in no uncertain terms was she or her friend a lesbian, and she never spoke to me again. But worse than that, she was now worried, as I had been, about how she recognized me. I later spotted her in a gay bar, and she still didn't talk to me. On the other hand, a few years later, in the same job, I actually came out to a friend. And of all my friends, who did want to come out to? In the office, on Friday rolls around, and people say, hey, what are you going to do for the weekend? Clean out the garage. Oh, what are you going to do for the barbecue? Hey, what are you going to do? I'm going to the gay pride parade. Oh, my goodness. We just kind of looked at each other. He said, "Are you gay?" I said, "Yes, I'm gay." And he was really, he was really fine with it. And so he was like a good person. So that was a happy surprise. And that was a good thing. In the beginning of the 90s, I was between jobs, and I decided to take my sales and print skills knowledge and go to work for the gay paper. At the time, it was called Outlines. Today, it's called Windy City Times. I loved that job, using my professionally developed skills to help build an institution that was by and for the community. But I was terrified, and Tracy will tell you this. I was terrified to put anything gay on my resume. And I was constantly trying to figure out how was I going to disguise this work experience on my resume, or how was I, if I didn't include it on my resume, how was I going to explain this gap? Well, as it turned out, working for the gay paper was just the beginning of my being out in the work world. Land Legal placed an ad in the classifieds of the paper that needed someone to help. They needed someone to help and open a regional office here in the Midwest. As a lesbian mom, I had numerous friends struggling with the issues of hiding their lesbianism from their children or husbands, or even worse, from themselves. Again, being out in the workplace, that was not even an idea for these women. And for women who did come out at that time, you could lose custody of your children, and many did lose custody. It was heartbreaking, and it was terrifying for me. Women who had been married perhaps got caught having a lesbian affair, or perhaps realized they were gay and filed for divorce, not knowing that at that time the huge weight of being gay was enough to label you an immoral person. You have to remember that in '86, the Supreme Court's decision in Bowers versus Hardwick criminalized gay sex. And so whether you were having sex or not, if you were gay, you were assumed to be breaking the law. That decision was not overturned until 2003 in Lawrence, Texas. So in the 80s and 90s, the paranoid about AIDS and the fear of rampant immorality adversely affected queer people in the workplace. And when it came to custody disputes, opposing counsel would claim that not only was that person gay, immoral, and a threat to children, they were also felons. There weren't a number of institutions or support networks you can go to for help, because it was commonly accepted, even by some queer people, that children, for their own safety, needed to be removed from any home that had an openly gay person, and especially if that person was a parent. When that ad for Land Legal was placed in the classified section of the paper, although I loved working through the paper and being out in the community, I was so affected by lesbians losing their children and the men who suffered so much failure for being queer. But I thought I needed to apply for this job. And then, all of a sudden, everything changed. All of my extracurricular activities needed to be identified, described in professional terms, and added to my resume. So for me, the 90s was a good time. Now, that's not true for all queer people in the workplace, but for me, it worked. And in '93, I was hired, and so I went from working in the gay media to doing legal activism. And employment issues were prominent, and I brought a '93 update, but of course it was a lot of years, so. But I have it somewhere for you guys. Just in case you want to see how in '93 legal issues were displayed and discussed and what was prominent. One story I can remember about working at Lambda is that one time we had a favorable decision on behalf of a woman, a mom downstate Illinois. For some reason, I was the person who had to call her and let her know of her victory. I called, she answered. Before I could even tell her, I started to cry. Because it was the beginning of turning the tide of losing custody based on sexual orientation. After the Midwest office was firmly established in '97, I went back to school for my MBA here. I was the only out gay person in class, and whoa, what a different environment that was from where I had just come from. Although thinking outside the box was encouraged, anything different than a corporate model was not always seen as a ticket to success. But after being so out, I couldn't be anything but out. And even better, though, I knew what my rights were and I knew how to advocate for them. So being out in school, that was not an issue. But I did have some concerns. I didn't have Baim at my school telling me about the corporate culture. Something that has worked well for me is to follow my passion. I've always loved making things work, breaking a problem down into smaller, workable action steps, and creating the world that I want to live in. After I graduated with my MBA, a guy called with a crazy idea of bringing the gay game to Chicago. So Some of you know that the gay games are held every 4 years and have an international attendance that exceeds the Olympics. And that next year will be held in Cleveland, Ohio. It is an amazing experience. So this one guy has this crazy idea of bringing the gay games to Chicago. I attended one meeting, I was hooked. I was moved by the 3 guiding principles: participation, inclusion, and personal best. That's all you can ask for as it relates to sports and culture. Within 2 years, we had raised sponsorships and money to send 4 delegates to attend the annual meeting that was held in Berlin, Germany. Your mind is open to so much more when you don't accept the problem as presented. Rather than address how do I survive or grow or be happy as a queer person in a mostly straight environment, I chose to work with gay people from around the world and had the unique opportunity to celebrate multiculturalism in a gay context. And in that environment, what was different about me was that I was not an athlete. Such a mundane difference. I loved it. When meeting people working on the gay games, people always began with what their sport was. I claimed organizing as my sport. I just love the challenge of selling the idea of bringing the gay games to Chicago, to the community, to the city, building on the local sports infrastructure, and the challenge of raising the money to mount a real bid. The guiding principles of participation, inclusion, and personal best are beautiful, ideal, and align with my idea for what the world would look like. In 2001, we made our presentation in Johannesburg, South Africa, and we lost. We were heartbroken. Losing's not the end of the world, and it indeed does make you stronger. You might hate it, but it does make you stronger. We made a decision right then and there to rise above the loss and power through to think of the long term and not burn any bridges as we privately nurtured our loss. That strategy actually worked in our favor, so that when the winning bid defaulted on our commitments, the gay game wound up in Chicago in 2006. It was an amazing gathering that brought thousands of gay people from around the world who spent, by the way, millions of dollars in the city of Chicago. That's not a bad way to reposition the concept of being out. After we lost the bid, Lambert was growing and had created a Midwest Regional Director position, which was a much larger role than my previous role in opening the office and laying the groundwork. The director position was about strategizing and executing how to deliver change. The field of discrimination is a very large arena and it continues to grow. The 2 issues I remember from the second time around with Mental Legal was preparing for the Lawrence v. Texas decision and winning marriage in states in the Midwest like Iowa, where the history of affirmative decisions we could build on. The question of what it is like to be out in the workplace doesn't make sense at a place like Mental Legal. The question I had to answer is, how do I, or how does any activist not work themselves into the ground? How do you maintain healthy working relationships with your partner if you're both activists? The questions of work balance are difficult when the work is so all-consuming. I went back to school and received a master's in public administration. And while in school, I continued my activism. I was organizing mayoral forums for the queer community where we were trying to host them around the city so that we got broader input into a questionnaire that we wanted all the mayoral candidates to complete. Little did I know that one of the candidates was going to be my boss. One of the first times I met our mayor was when I was asked to introduce him at a forum where he was taking questions from the community. The context was gay, I'm way gay. And, my questions for him were nothing about gay. I wanted to know his position on immigration reform. Timing is everything. As my public administration program was ending and I realized that there really was going to be change in the city, I thought, if there's an opportunity, I want to be a part of making change here. And I got in quick mode. I told as many people as possible that I would be interested in a position in the new administration. I got a call, and then within a few weeks I was offered the position of Commissioner in Commission on Human Relations. There could be no better fit for me right now. But now the question of what it is like to be out in the workplace, out for work, that does come back into play. So the new administration began in the middle of 2011, and on June 1st of 2011, civil unions went into effect. My partner of 18 years is back there. There she is. One of the couples who were ceremoniously to be united in Millennium Park. The department coordinated with 30-some couples, 5 judges, paparazzi galore, can't even count the politicians, was the Commission on Human Relations. And one of the most intimate moments of my life, both of our families were in attendance, were crying, and totally exposed to this new staff who were all buzzing around coordinating the details of our civil union. So I guess I was way out to them too. The Chicago Commission on Human Relations serves as the civil rights arm of the City of Chicago, and as Commissioner, I'm committed to serving all communities impacted by discrimination, even when they may harbor questions about queer people. I work closely with the police, outreach to immigrant communities, religious communities, disability communities, all the protected classes, and often, almost always, at events or meetings, my partner and I are the only out gay couple in attendance. The question of what it is like to be out at work, and in this case, out for work, is that being gay is only one of the many dimensions of me, and only one of the many dimensions of the social justice issues we work on. I think at this point in my life, the question of being out or gay has a larger impact on the people who are not familiar with gay people or gay couples. In this position of Commissioner, we model the simplicity of activists committed to our work in social justice. As students preparing to enter into the workplace, I would suggest you follow your passion. Don't be afraid to take risks. Do what makes you happy. Do what challenges you to be a better person. We live in an amazing time. Lockheed is here pitching their culture. You know, that's an amazing thing, and that never happened in the 70s. We live in an amazing time. Savor what that means. Ask yourself, what role do you want to play in the trajectory of history? I'm comfortable and happy with the decision-making process and the risks I've taken. I like where it's taken me. And I will continue to walk that path wherever it takes me, wherever it takes us. At this point in my life, I have no choice but to be out for work, to be out for social justice, and to be out for life. Thank you so much for inviting me.